about that back end coming out like I talked about earlier. Whereas if you're in a cup car and you give it too much gas, that back end too quickly, that back end is just going to kick. And so these things, with just being lighter and easier to turn, these things are a lot of fun to drive. And that's why so many people love them. There are guys who make a living off of just driving these cars because these cars are so fun to drive.
And of course, in the real world, a couple of those guys like Bubba Pollard and Stephen Nash, they're the kind of short track legends that we talked about before going on air. Tell us a little bit about what these cars, what they get up to in the real world as well.
Yeah, these cars kind of go to all the famous tracks you would see maybe some of the cup cars going to. They go to Martinsville, Bristol. These cars are a lot of fun to race. You also find them just in your hometown at some small tracks. These things just are everywhere because so many people love these things, along with just the regular late model, which is something you would see someone get into growing up. Maybe they're coming up through the ranks, they would hop into a late model and then maybe a super late if they really wanted to do that. But most of the time, the late model is what you'll see more of, with the super lates being another option per se. So, but either way, these cars always put on a great race and it's always a lot of fun to drive. And that's why some drivers from the Cup Series will hop back into them. Kyle Busch will run the Snowball Derby, along with some other drivers that may go back, Eric Jones, Christopher Bell. You just never know who you're going to find in one of these things because short tracks are where NASCAR roots come from. It's where our young guys start to grow up. And now that we see more dirt tracks also, but it came from the short track era. So you'll see a lot of the young guys come up through these cars before getting up into the higher NASCAR series.
One of the most famous NASCAR Cup drivers, Dale Earnhardt Jr. He retired from the Cup Series a couple of years ago, but he has come out and run a couple of the Xfinity Series races, the kind of second tier of NASCAR, and he said that he enjoyed that. He hasn't had that much fun racing as when he raced late models himself back in the late 1990s. So I guess that's what you're talking about. It's not only is it a way of coming up through the ranks to get all the way to the Cup Series, but also once you get there, a way of kind of almost unwinding. I'm sure Kyle Busch doesn't need to compete in the Snowball Derby, but does so for the fun of it, which is what we love to see. These proper champion drivers just racing for the pure enjoyment.
Oh yeah, these guys love to go back to these things. It's why you see some drivers, when Casey Keynes was in the Cup Series, he'd want to go run dirt because that's where his background comes from. He loves to run those races. It's the same thing with some of these short track guys who love to go back and hop into. Bubba Wallace loves to go and hop back into a Legends car that he owns and runs some of those races. He grew up there. I got to watch Bubba Wallace run Legends cars at Charlotte. So, and then people like Kyle Busch who want to go back and sometimes run a late model, or it's these guys love to go back to their roots and have fun again because not everything, yes, you always want to be winning championships, things like that, but your roots are always still there. And as you come up, you find cars that you love and you mesh with well. And it's just, your goal is to just have fun with racing. You want to win championships, but your main overall goal is to have fun. That's what racing is about. And these guys love to go back and just hop into their roots and have that fun.
Yeah, and go back to what drew them to the sport in the first place, I guess. Because if you're a NASCAR Cup driver nowadays, well, you're under, well, as has been shown during this lockdown, you really are, even when they're not racing, they are really under the media spotlight nowadays, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, no matter what you do, even when you go back to some of these shorter, smaller races, you're always under a spotlight now. But at least when they go back to some of these smaller races, they aren't under as big of a spotlight and they can kind of have some more freedom with it and have some more fun. I think of Matt Kenseth. He went up and was running a few races up in Wisconsin, or ran a race up there, and he was still under a spotlight up there because he's Matt Kenseth running this race. But at the same point, it definitely was not as big of a media presence, as what you would see if you go to a NASCAR Cup race whenever there's not a pandemic going on. And it's just, there's such a big microscope over all of these guys that I'm sure going to some of these smaller tracks and being able to put that behind them a little bit is definitely a nice breath of fresh air for them.
Just taking our attention to the to the times in practice here. We've got the 64 of Catalano. Now, interestingly, Brian, there he was running about a full half a second slower than he was in practice. Now, I would guess on a track this short, the draft wouldn't make such a big difference. Do you think there might be any particular reason why he might be dropping off the pace a little bit more?
Well, a big reason right now might be the amount of rubber down on the track. Depending on how when you set up an iRacing session, um, on how you set the track wear or things like that, that could actually, with these cars and the amount of traction you want to get from them, that could slow it down quite a bit. Because you're going to have a different amount of traction based on how much rubber is laid down on the track. I don't think the draft is really going to affect these cards too much. Your main points where you're going to pick up is going to be on entry and exit. If you can get a deeper, smoother entry than someone else, you're going to pick up time there. But then if you can get on that gas sooner than anyone else and be able to carry that momentum off, that's really going to be where you pick up time, because then you're going to carry that momentum all the way down the front stretch or back stretch.
I'm just looking at the 54 of Eric Conklin, showing his car there, the super late models. Of course, these cars they have a kind of silhouette body that goes over the chassis, so you can kind of, in theory, you could kind of have any type of car design you like on these cars. And I noticed the 54 of Conklin actually has ironically a Tesla body on top of his car. And quite ironic that these cars are probably about as far away from a Tesla as you can possibly get with their big old school 358 cubic inch V8.
Yeah, I love the cars like this that you're able to really put your own touch on. The street stocks are the same way. You can go in and you can put your own front on it and your own symbol of your manufacturer symbol on the front and on the back, and it just gives you a lot more freedom. You can really have your way with this car and whatever you want it to be. You can have it be a Chevy. You could throw a Honda on there. You could throw a Corvette symbol, whatever you want to throw, a Tesla. These cars are a lot of fun for everyone to paint along with run, because you get to express your creative freedom in iRacing, and that's such an amazing thing.
It is, and of course, today for those who are new to the program, that these cars are actually designed using a program called Trading Paints, which I've, as a relative tech novice, I find a fascinating piece of kit where you can just have a scroll around on Trading Paints and choose the paint scheme you want, or even design your own, and then it automatically wraps them over the top of the cars for us to look at in iRacing. It's an extraordinary piece of technology, I think.
Oh yeah, Trading Paints is such a great app, especially when I first came into iRacing. I had watched other people, so knowing a little bit about Trading Paints helps. But to be able to have more freedom in what we express, because iRacing gives you some options, but you can't really make your full creative custom stuff through iRacing that others will be able to see. But when you throw the Trading Paints app on top of it, and then we all get to see those cars, the iconic cars even that some people will paint, like the old Dale Earnhardt #3 cars, or the Bill Elliott nines, whatever your heart may desire, you could see through Trading Paints. And that's such a cool thing, because especially with some of the cars that are coming out or are out right now, to be able to see some of these famous schemes being run by other people, you get to then show off maybe who your favorite driver was or your favorite scheme. And that's such a nice detail that's been added.
And of course, it does give you complete freedom. I've noticed the number 12 has a Donald Trump paint scheme on his car. So, well, interesting how that car gets on in the race today. That's our practice session over. We have 5 minutes of qualifying to go. So, then we're really now going to see who has the ultimate pace. Who are you expecting to lay down the pole position lap here, Brian?
I gotta say that it's gotta be Catalano is who my guess is. He's just been very fast, and so I just don't see him not getting that pole position. But you never know who else be able to jump up there. So it's gonna be really cool to see who may be able to lay down that fast lap that maybe he hasn't been able to yet, or if he maybe misses the bottom and someone else is able to hit it better, then it's gonna put him in a little bit in the back, and so It's going to be very fun to see how these guys qualify and then how they try to come up through the field if they do qualify towards that back.
Watching the onboard footage of we're on board with Zach Skodnicki in the 44 car, the New Yorker. This just is a great illustration, I think, of just how unique this Phoenix track is. I mean, the difference in lines that you can take, and as we see, he just hops onto the apron here, nearly rubbing the wall, and then back out again. I mean, this is it's a proper driver circuit. This, isn't it?
Oh yeah, this track is a lot of fun to drive for a lot of people. This is actually going to be where the NASCAR Cup Series and Xfinity and Truck Series championships are hosted now instead of Homestead, Miami, like it has been for years. So a lot of people love this track because it does give you that little bit of roots of that short track feeling, but it's not truly quite a short track, I would say, because you don't really have those really tight corners. You can drive it in so deep here. As long as you can keep it from pushing up too far and then be able to get back into the gas, this is a fast short track is what I like to call it because again of those very different lines.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fantastic event. The championship weekend, all the way in November. I'm sure it'll come round very quickly. And of course, we have actually managed. We've already had one NASCAR Cup Series race here at Phoenix already, which was won in quite dramatic circumstances by Joey Logano in the number 22 Penske Mustang. But of course, the course here opened back in 1964, so it's been around for quite a while. And it was actually AJ Foyt who won the first ever oval race, and even then, an average speed of 107.536 miles an hour in 1964. AJ, he certainly knew how to pedal, didn't he?
Oh yes, he did. A lot of these guys know this track has just changed so many times throughout the years, and it's always fun to see who can stick with the consistency. A guy like Kevin Harvick is always fast here. Every time we come to Phoenix, everyone just immediately picks Kevin Harvick to be the winner, and there have been some great battles here at Phoenix. I especially think of the finish between Kevin Harvick and Carl Edwards as one of the greatest finishes I've ever seen happen at Phoenix.
Fingers crossed, we'll hopefully get one tonight in this race. I think we are. It seems like we've got a lot of fast cars and a brilliant track to go racing on. So, all of our for those who are new to the iRacing service or to here on Apex Racing TV, first of all, welcome. Great to have your company. In iRacing, the series organisers can choose to give the cars the entire track to themselves to set their qualifying time or group qualifying. And as you can see on screen here, this is solo qualifying, so no mucking around with draft or anything like that. It is simply, this is where we're going to see probably who has the absolute ultimate pace. And as you quite rightly called, Brian, it's Catalano once more. He's just put in a 26.755, but he did a 26.309 in practice, so he's still got speed in that car.
Yeah, it's going to be, I think some of the faster times will be towards the end of the race. Once we get some actual rubber laid down on this track as the race progresses, I think we'll start to see some more traction and see these guys actually start to pick up time as the race progresses.
Now, tell me about tyres, because this looks, of course, you're hardly ever driving in a straight line around Phoenix. It's always just punishing the tyre virtually the entire lap. Do you think we're going to see cars coming into pit road on more than one occasion to change tyres, or how do you see that going to play out?
I think whenever they get the opportunity to come in, as long as they haven't been out there, I mean, if they've only gone a couple laps, I don't see them coming in. But after I'd say probably 6, 7 laps, you're gonna see if there's a caution, you're gonna see someone come in because tires are always important, especially in almost all of the oval series. If you can get tires, you're gonna be pick up at least a couple tenths over everyone else, especially on restarts. Restarts is a big thing for fresh tires on the oval service.
Like I say, they always say one and done. So the tyres are at their very best at the very beginning. So that's our qualifying session complete. So we will be heading to the grid here at Phoenix International Raceway shortly. And as you called it, Brian, the 64 of Catalano puts it on the pole. But that gets him on the front row of the grid. But it's not going to be easy around this very tight and tough circuit here at Phoenix.
No, you got to expect some hard driving here. Guys are going to send this thing in deep. If you can get to the inside of someone, then all you really got to do is put your nose there, and if they come down, it then becomes on them. Your goal then is if you get to the bottom, you have to hold it there. If you push up, you're going to end up wrecking the person on your outside. So you can send it in deep and from a couple car lengths back as long as you can hold the bottom. If not, all you're going to do is end up causing a wreck.
So as you can see on the screen here, we've got a number of cars out going for their 3 minute warm up session, just to get a few last laps in, a few extra laps of practice, just to get the eye in, get used to this Phoenix International Raceway. Now, Brian, as you mentioned there, all how it's so you've got plenty of opportunity to be able to dive in deep. Do you think that we're going to see perhaps some plenty contact and probably quite a few cautions in this race? I would wager.
Yeah, I think there will definitely be a few cautions. It's just about patience a lot of the times. You can send it in deep, but sometimes you got to think better of it and think, is it really worth sending it deep? Another thing with these cars is these cars sit pretty low. So every person likes to have their camera set differently on where you sit in the car. And I noticed when I was practicing that it's actually very hard to see the front of the car. You can just kind of see the outline of the top, but you can't really see where the front of your car is. So a lot of that is if these guys don't have that huge experience in these cars, knowing where your front bumper is, because you could think it's back a bit further. Because if you notice, these front bumpers, they stick out quite a bit from where the cockpit is. So you got to be careful to not send that down into someone.
You're absolutely spot on. And of course, if you've been used to driving a cup car or even just a normal road car, if you're new to driving in ovals, you're right. Those are really extended. And of course, that design lends quite a lot to the aerodynamics that these cars have and gives them that kind of a little bit extra grip that these short track super late models have.
Yeah, it's made to just suction the car down to the pavement. It's made to just get you on the ground and keep you there all the way through these turns and down the straightaways. You do not want any gap with these things. You want to have as little air between the ground and your car as possible so that you have as much grip and speed as possible.
Well, that's our warm up session over, and we will be heading to the grid shortly. So, Brian, why don't you take it away and tell our top 10 numbers, our top 10 order here for the New York Thunder E Series?
So starting in first was Trevor Catalano with a 26.755, taking your pole position. Starting in second is William Kruska. Third is Kenny Zeems in the number 5. Starting fourth is Max Deck in the 631. Fifth, Ken Zeems in the 90. Eric Conklin is starting in sixth. Tyler Catalano is starting in seventh. Mark Sergio is starting eighth. Matt Lambert starting ninth. Michael Scholler starting 10th. Don Adamazic starting 11th. And Scott Nicky, sorry about that, starting 12th. Then we have Dustin Sorber starting in 13th. Patrick Hosier starting in 14th. Cullen Jostin starting 15th, Jody Reinard starting 16th, back in 17th is Russell Peets, Stephen Barber starting 18th, and Jason Hand starting 19th.
So all of our cars are behind our Ford Mustang safety car, Catalano in the 64, pacing the field, waiting for our green flag. The pace car is off, and we are ready to go here in the New York Thunder E-Series, and we are green racing here at Phoenix International Raceway, and the number 64 of Catalano leads into turn 1.
Yeah, we saw he got a great run there as the 5 got underneath of Zeems, got underneath Kruska there to take that spot away. We see a few guys moving up. So these guys seems like they're being pretty patient right now. They're not getting anywhere really near each other.
Now tell us about tire temperature here, Brian. Do these cars take a while to come up to temperature, or is it just flat stick from the beginning?
Well, a lot of times you don't really end up finding that out because these cars, with it being the short track series, a lot of times you'll end up having a caution not too long after the green flag because people will just end up sending it. So it's kind of more of something that no one ever actually thinks about with these cars. So it's not something to really monitor too much.
Oof, and you're saying, look, the number 64 of Catalano, he is wasting absolutely no time. And of course, he's making a break for it already. Of course, with such a short track here, lap traffic is going to be a bit of an issue, I would suspect, Brian. And
Oh,
right
and
enough,
we
we
have
have a
a
caution, yellow flag. So we have a caution. So we will wait for our Ford Mustang safety car to come out, and let's see why. Let's see in this replay why. The number 90 here on the screen. See what's going on here. Let's see the reason for our caution here. Ah, yes, contact between the 77 and the 21. Do you know what? That's exactly what you were talking about, Brian. If you're just on the inside and somebody turns in on you, you were saying it's on them.
Yeah, so that's one of those things where, again, we're going down the dog leg. You don't really, again, know where people were quite gonna go. So he may have thought that he was gonna go further to the inside, and at that point, the 77 just came down, thinking he's gonna have more room. Instead, he was right there, and they ended up making contact, bringing out that caution.
Now, it's worth while we're under caution, making our viewers aware that in iRacing, the drivers in this case have been given what's called a fast repair. So, if the drivers take any damage on their vehicle, they can come into pit lane and take a kind of instant repair. It's kind of like a spare car, and you can stop and immediately get that repair and get back out on track again. And of course, as you can see on the top left-hand side of your screen on our timing tower, we only have 40 laps, and we've done 5 already. And 40 laps around here is not going to take an awful lot of time at all. So you can't afford to spend any more time in the pits than is necessary, because you've really not got. It's not like a 500-mile super speedway race. You can't afford to drop off the lead lap.
Yeah, the biggest thing is you want to save that fast repair as long as possible here. As we saw, we weren't too long into this race and a caution was already come out. So if that trend continues, you know there's going to be more towards the end of this race, and you don't want to get caught up in something and then not have that fast repair. So you may have taken some damage now, but if you think you can wait until at least after the halfway mark, then I would think about using it. I would not use it if you don't have to before that halfway point.
And that's just always the dilemma for the driver, and only the driver can make that decision. It's so hard to tell, and you almost like in iRacing the simulation is so accurate that even a small bit of damage, you just notice that slight change in maybe the steering or that little bit more reluctancy in the power. And I've just seen here the lights are off on our Ford Mustang safety car, so we're ready to go back green again. The number 64 of Catalano. Let's see if he can make another breakaway. I feel he's going to have to work hard for the win today with a couple of these cautions that we're likely to see. So lights on the safety car are off. That means it signals to the driver behind that it is pulling in, and we will be going green in just a couple of seconds here in the New York Thunder eSeries at Phoenix Raceway. So waiting for our safety car to pull in now. This field well under control, and waiting for the number 64 of Catalano to gas up, and there he goes. Green, green, green. We're off again here in the New York Thunder Series. Down they go towards into turn 1, and it's Catalano who's got away nice and clean before, but the number 5 and number 6 not too far behind.
Yeah, one of the important things there was Kenny Zeems was able to get a good restart and be able to pull in front of the 6th of William Kruska. It was, if he didn't get that good of a restart. Oh, and we see contact there from the 54 of Eric Conklin and Kruska. They both seem to manage to save it as the 44 then ducks. Oh, and the 2 gets turned in the melee along with the 44.
And we have another caution. That the number 2 car there in the Lowe's, I would say that's a Jimmy Johnson livery, the Lowe's Chevrolet. Let's get a replay of that. Of course, just so they say cautions breed cautions. Of course, when the cars are in a really tight pack, it's so easy to happen there. Number 6 going slowly, and then do you think there's a bit of contact there? The number 6 turning round the 2?
Yeah, so the 6, as we saw with the contact with the 54, he ended up saving it, but at that point you're going so much slower because the momentum is everything in these cars. You want to try and carry that momentum off of the corner. So with him being turned in the corner and ending up saving it, he was so much slower. So instead of sticking to the inside wall, which he should have done, he kind of pushed up a little bit And at that point, he made contact when they tried to go four wide.
So looking on screen here, the number 2 of Matthew Lambert, now in 18th position. Interestingly, his car has got a lot of heavy damage there on his number 2 Lowe's machine. However, he chose not to go into pit lane. So I guess, as you say, for now at least, he's looking to hold on to his fast repair, or at least have a few laps under caution to assess the damage.
Well, one of the biggest things here with this being a shorter track is that you don't want to go a lap down while pitting. So you want to make sure that you're caught up to the field before you pit. If you pit too early, it can then cause you to go that lap down, which is why you want to make sure you're up with the field so that you have that extra time to make sure that you stay on that lead lap.
You're spot on, right enough. There he goes, number 2 of Lambert. He is now, as you can see on our timing tower on the left-hand screen, he has gone into pit lane after catching the back of the field up. And of course, quite a short pit lane here at Phoenix. He takes his, now, interestingly, he's taking tyres as well. While you're under caution, may as well take them with a quarter of the race already complete.
Yeah, it's tires at this point. We're 10 laps in. We don't know exactly. We've probably had about 5 to 7 green flag laps, I would say. The caution laps do go very quick here at Phoenix, and people love that about Phoenix because you're not pacing forever. But he was able to get those tires, so he'll have a little bit more fresh tires than the other guys, which may be able to allow him to send it in a little bit more as the race goes. But that determines if we end up getting a green flag run here or if we end up getting more cautions.
And I guess when you're in that position where you've been turned round and you take damage early and you've got to go to pit lane, at that point you've then got to start taking risks, don't you? You've got to think, yeah, I can't catch up with the field on pure pace. I may as well throw the dice and have a go at least with new tyres.
Yes, well, the hard part with that, though, is then when you've used your faster pair already, because as we saw there, he definitely had to, because he would have had engine damage from the way he ended up hitting that wall. So he now has to worry about playing it safe to at least end up being there at the finish, because otherwise he could get caught up in something, and then his race is done from that point forward.
Yes, of course. And as we said, there's very, very little time to actually recover. Now, of course, if you're the 64 of Trevor Catalano, I mean, he's proven already tonight that he's got the ultimate one-lap pace and is able to break away. But he's not going to have it all his own way with the number 5 car there. He's going to have to really. Well, with Kenny Zeems there in the number 5, he's really going to have to. He's going to have to repeatedly basically execute that breakaway from the safety car period. It's going to be tricky for him.
Yeah, the leader really has the most control in oval races, because as soon as that pace car pulls off, you can go effectively. Depending on what the series runs, some series make you wait until the green flag actually flies. Others, as soon as that pace car leaves the racing surface, you can go. And then to that point, it gives the leader so much control that all he really needs to do is get that jump heading into turn 1. And then if there's a caution, he has that lead back.
So we've got our, speaking of getting the lead, the safety car, the Ford Mustang safety car, the lights are off. So that means we're ready to go racing. And here we go, the 64 of Trevor Catalano. He gasses up and moves straight across to defend his position. Brilliant defensive driving there from the 64 of Catalano as they fly into turn 1. Hopefully they'll get through clean this time.
Yeah, as we were talking about the restart there, you saw him gas it up really quick to get that jump. The 5 also had a great restart to get ahead of the 54, because if you go in side by side, there's a better chance of crashing, but there's also a better chance you're going to lose that second place spot to that third place car.
Looking at the number 5 of Zeems, though, he's looking a lot more feisty on this restart, obviously wanting to put pressure on Catalano, and I guess he's going to have to. He's going to have to try and make his life as difficult as possible, because maybe he doesn't have exactly the same pace as the 64 of Catalano, but really going to make his life difficult. And oh, we have another yellow flag, so there's obviously, we're going to go back under caution. There's obviously been an incident further back off camera. We're going to get a replay of that. What's happened here, Brian?
Well, it looks like maybe someone sent it in a little deep, and yeah, just like that. So that might have been, again, like I said, where Sorber was there just minding his own business, and the car behind just sent it in a little deep. he might it might have been an issue where he might not have that experience in this car and just wasn't quite sure where his nose was, or he just missed his braking point, and at that point the nine was just along for the ride.
Yeah, and one of the cars there actually ending up in the catch fence there. So even on a track that's relatively low speed compared to some of the big super speedways that we go to, you can still the chance of a really big wreck. So 15 laps down then of our 40. And again, Catalano's got to do it all together. Now, we're seeing all of our drivers head into pit lane here. This is fascinating stuff. So coming in to get new tires, I suppose.
Yeah, so at this point, we're 16 laps in. We're probably have run somewhere between 8 to 11 green flag laps. So they definitely, at this point, is a time where you're going to come in and get those tires. That's where I said probably that 6 or 7 green flag lap mark is where you're going to then make that decision to come in and get those tires.
Do you think this is a risk for Catalano in the 64, knowing that he might well? There's a possibility that some cars might stay out under caution, and then he's got to have the danger of coming through the pack, which we've seen has been fraught with danger. And even if you don't make a mistake, you can still get caught up in a wreck. Would you say this is slightly risky from the 64?
Well, I would say it's a very hard call to make because some of these cars that have been towards the back of the pack have been probably pitting, at least on maybe the last caution or the caution before. So at that point, they have fresher tires, which means as if a run progresses, they're then going to be able to stay up there, and their tires are going to last longer. Whereas he's going to start slowing down as his tires wear. So it's definitely a hard call to make. It's one that's always debated on whether you come or not. But it's kind of a decision. He has that fast repair if something was to happen. But maybe there can be another caution and the guys in front of him will now pit like just happened to him.
Yeah, that's certainly. He'll be hoping that the traffic in front of him will pit. But look at that. The lights are coming off the safety car, so we're about to go green flag. And look at that. The number 5 of Zims, looks like he didn't pit, at least. He's still out at the front.
Yeah, that's an interesting call. But again, it's one of those things where, as we see in real life, the call can gain you position as long as you can hold it.
Here we are. We're about to go back green flag racing then. An interesting strategy call from Kenny Zims looking to try and split the 64 of Catalano. And we are green, and Zims zooms away from the final turn as they head over the start-finish line. And we are back green racing onto lap 18. And look at that, the number 90 car there. Just really on the very back bumper of the 5 as they head through turn 1 and down towards the apron of 2 and 3.
Yeah, he got really lucky there as he was able to gas it up before Zims even gassed it up. So he got lucky he didn't have to back out of it because on oval you cannot pass before that start-finish line. So he would have had to stay behind him no matter what happened there. So he timed it just perfectly to be able to stay on his back bumper, but Zims is now able to pull away as we see.
Now I notice here, we have 2 Zims here. Is there a family affair here at the front of this race?
Oh, it does look so. We have Kenny Zims in the 5 and Ken Zims in the 90. So maybe that played a little bit of a part into what happened there. So
oh, and the wreck coming, the number 2. It's the number 2 again. Has been involved in a big wreck on the start-finish line, and we are under caution once more. And that number 2 is taking a toll back to pit lane. And of course, that 2 car of Matthew Lambert has already used the fast repair. But the 5 of Kenny Zims has got through cleanly, with the 64 of Catalano back in 6th.
Yeah, that is heartbreaking for the 2 of Matthew Lambert because he had to be careful for the rest of this race. He's now out. The 44 was just underneath him. That's one of those things where turn 3 and 4 is so wide open. People will run the middle. People will run right on that yellow line. Some people will run below it. And that's what we saw happen there just on exit. The 44 seemed to push up a little bit and end up getting into the 2.
Yeah, and of course the 28 car there, an innocent bystander there. Of course, the track is of course in certain places, especially on the big apron there in the dog leg, the track is incredibly wide, but down the front straight, going over the start finish line, it is incredibly narrow. And if there's a car that wrecks there on the start finish line, as we've seen a couple of times, there's just nowhere to go, is there?
Yeah, it's very hard to know what you're going to do on that front stretch if there's a wreck, because it's just they could hit that inside wall and bounce back across the track. Even if they're holding that brake, depending on the momentum they're carrying, it just shoots them across. And same thing with the outside. And so you're very limited on where you can go with there being the pit road wall and the outside wall. So you just have to, at that point, pick one and hope.
Notice something absolutely fascinating there. The number 5 of Kenny Zeems. I was just about to say here he comes into pit lane, and he certainly sold me the dummy. I wonder if he sold any of his fellow competitors the dummy, because he was just about to go into pit lane and then dive back out again. So either changed his mind or a little bit of mind games there from the number 5 car.
I noticed he's been doing it all race, even since the beginning. Every time we've had a caution, he's done it. So I think he's just hoping to catch one or two people behind him and maybe send them towards the back.
So the number 5, Kenny Zeems, be interesting to see how when he comes in, because he's had 22 laps, of course, a lot of those under caution, but he's 22 laps nonetheless on those tyres. So be interesting to see what he does. But he allows the 90 pass and then gasses back up again, just keeping temperatures up, I guess. How long do you think Kenny Zeems will be able to make this last for? I mean, it's probably a good bet that he will get another caution where he'll be able to come into pit lane. Of course, coming into pit lane under green flag is the cardinal sin here, I suppose.
Well, depending on the fuel load that they are running, I think you could make it the whole race without pitting. But the dangers of that is the tires, of course, because back there in fourth now is Trevor Catalano, and he's gonna be coming. So you really don't want to wait out too long. He might have overdone it already with what's happened, especially with Catalano being up there in fourth now on those fresher tires. So as long as this stays clean, I could see Catalano getting there very quickly.
Yes, as you rightly say, Catalano, he looked in quite a lot of trouble there, with a lot of traffic to come through on the last caution. But just as each caution's come by, he's just been able to quietly, just without even fighting too much, just been able to just sort of climb his way back up the road. So this is getting nicer and nicer for Catalano in the 64 as the cars peel off into pit lane in front of him.
What Kenny Zeems is hoping for is for this thing to stay the same rate it's going, where he can get that good restart and then a caution flies, and that same thing to just happen over and over, because he has full control with being the leader. If you are sitting there in second or third, you're really just going off of him whenever that pace car pulls down and just hoping you can time it correctly. Whereas the leader, they have that full control. They can stack up the field and then go, or they can go early. Whatever they really want to do, they have that power.
The lights are off then on our Ford Mustang safety car. So it'll be the number 5 of Kenny Zeems who will pace the field, and we're about to go green. Let's see how Kenny Zeems is going to approach this. He gasses up, but the number 90 of Ken Zeems is around there as well and looking to go round the outside line. That's a long way round here into turn 1 at Phoenix, and there goes number 64 Catalano up the inside into second position.
As we see the 6 now challenging there for that second position. Oh, big contact between the 90 and the 6, as the 6 just kind of came up a little bit, I believe, and just turned straight across the 90's nose right into that outside wall.
That was a pity, because the number 6 there was just looking like it was going to be, well, let's get a replay of that. Looks like, as you were saying, the number 6 really getting in there deep, nearly touches with the 64. But actually, how do you see that one, Brian? That looked like a racing incident to me, or is there blame to be apportioned there?
I think the 6 was just following the line from what I could tell, and I don't think he expected the 90. Yeah, see, if you see Catalano pushes up there, and Kruska was just trying to follow that same line to get that top before the entry of 3, and I don't think he expected the 90 to be there. That's at such a fast pace that's what I said before about that dog leg being so spread out. You never quite know where someone might be.
Yeah, a brilliant camera angle there from our producer Dennis Branch in the booth, and that overhead camera really gave a good impression of it. The 90 just swiped into the side of him, and actually looks like the number 90 of Ken Zeems. He's actually come away pretty scot free from that one.
Yeah, I think the 90 was just holding his line. I think he was trying to keep the 6 down below him a little bit there. Um, and the 6 was just trying to come back up onto the track. So I don't really think Ken Zeems was trying to turn him there. I think it was just one of those things he was running his line and honestly might not have even known that William Kruska was below him there.
Now, this is interesting, as you say. The drivers should have enough fuel to get all the way to the end of this relatively short 40 lap race. Now, our number 5 here, Kenny Zeems, has the same tyres that he started on 27 laps ago. Catalano in the 64, our pole sitter, he has fresh tyres. So that number 5 car is at a serious disadvantage to the 64. However, we've really struggled for any length of time under green flag. So it could be that the number 5 strategy now, he's maybe just got to bet on that strategy and try and limp that number 5 to the end on the same tyres, and possibly even keep Catalano behind. And of course, also the number 5, if he can back the 64 of Catalano up a little bit, the chances of him being involved in a wreck are much higher, of course.
Yeah, so his best bet right now is for the Zeems to work together. If Kenny Zeems can get a good restart and let Ken Zeems know when that's happening, at what point he's going, then Ken Zeems can get inside of Catalano and not allow him to be able to make that bottom of the corner into one, which at that point would slow him down. So that's probably the best bet, is to get the two behind him racing, and he'll be able to pull away a little bit at that point. And even if Catalano gets back around Ken Zeems in the 90, then there's going to be enough space there that by then, hopefully, a caution will come out for him. That's what he's probably betting on at this point.
So the lights are off again on our Ford Mustang safety car. We are on lap 29, so just coming up for 10 laps to go in this one. Hopefully let's get some green flag running to the end, as it will be number 5 of Kenny Zeems in that black and red and grey car, the number 5 to lead the field away, but Catalano is there on the outside line, and this will be interesting to see how this goes at the restart. We are nearly ready to go. Our full field there, all warming up behind, swarming like a pack of bees as we come round the final turn, ready to go. We'll wait for our pace car to climb in, and we will be green. So here we go then. The number 5 of Kenny Zeems will gas up, and he goes early. And look at that, the 90 of Ken Zeems goes straight up the inside of Catalano. What a great move there from the number 90, straight up the inside of the 64 car.
Yeah, that's what Kenny Zeems was hoping for, and I can imagine the Zeems are working together a little bit there to time that perfectly so that that could happen. Because now the 90, if he can stay, as we have a caution come out, we'll get a replay to find out what that was. But as we saw, the 90 was able to get to the inside of Catalano and able to hold that position throughout the entire way around the track.
Well, you've got to say that the number 5 of Kenny Zeems, we're going to try not get our Zeems mixed up, but as you say, the Zeems definitely working together. So let's get a replay there. And yeah, just as you say, the 31 and the 77, the 31, the cat car just adjusted the line ever so slightly, and that was enough just to clip the car in front. So, of course, for in iRacing, every competitor will have a differing type of setup. Some drivers use one screen, some use 3 screens in a kind of wraparound effect, and some will even use a virtual reality headset. Now, of course, that gives you varying degrees of peripheral vision, and of course, at this track, I would say peripheral vision is one of the most important things to getting around clean, I guess.
Yeah, especially on that dog leg, because again, anyone could be anywhere. You never know, like as we saw with the wreck earlier, he may not have even known that that car was there. He was just driving his line, and next thing you know, he was going around. So it's just one of those things where you have to be careful with what you do. You have to constantly be checking your relative and not make a move until you're 100% sure that you are clear to do it. Otherwise, you're going nose first into the wall.
So, for those of you watching who've seen the number 2 of Lambert speeding around past the safety car, apparently ignoring the safety car, they are not. It's called a wave around. So they get there. He's come round to come. He'll actually get his lap back. So he'll now be back onto the lead lap. So the number 5 of Kenny Zeems still on his original tyres, but it doesn't seem to be blunting his pace too much. Perhaps we've had so few green laps that is actually means that Kenny Zeems still has plenty of life in those tyres.
Yeah, it's definitely going to help. The main help he's getting, though, is with Ken Zeems being able to get up alongside Trevor Catalano there, because at that point, once they're racing, it's always going to slow down the two cars that are racing one another and allow that car in front to just run his line, and he's going to start to pull away. And that's what he's needing to happen, and it's what's been happening.
Now, for those new to oval racing, what is the procedure? So we're on lap 33 now of 40. Now, of course, we're nearing the end of this race. What is the procedure of do we finish the race behind the safety car, or what, or do we always go back to green to finish the race? Tell our viewers how that works, Brian.
So it really depends on the series and what the league runs. You have the option to not run any green white checkers. And if you've watched any NASCAR races, you know a green white checkered. If there's a caution within the last 3 laps of the race, or 4, depending on how long it takes to pace around, you'll when you go back green, you'll take the green flag, you'll then take the white flag, and then that lap around is the last one, and you'll take the checkered. And you can have varying amount of attempts depending on the league and series and just whatever you want to run. So I believe at the Legends cars the other night, they did have a couple green-white checkers. I believe they ended up having 2 attempts. So we'll see what happens tonight and if they can finish under green or if they end up needing those green-white checkers.
Well, hopefully we do get that finish under green, because I think it would be great to see a dogfight between the number 5 of Kenny Zeems and the 64 of Catalano, and of course the 90 of Ken Zeems. And if you're what's going through the number 64 of Catalano's mind? You know, is he must be thinking, oh, I've got all the pace, I was getting away at the front, and I've got to keep working hard. Lights are off, and we are go again off the safety car. So the number 5 of Kenny Zeems gasses away, but much better start from the 64 of Catalano here. But look at the 90 of Kenny Zeems. He's not too far behind either. 64 goes to the wide line, 90 goes to the inside line. Oh, this could be close.
Yeah, one of the main problems there was that the 5 of Kenny Zeems has seemingly been going around the same time as as a big wreck happens back behind. We'll get a replay on that and let you know what happened there. But back to that restart, he's been going about the same point, and Catalano was able to time that up and get alongside him, and then it just pushed him wide in the turn.
Yeah, so let's have a look at this wreck. Yeah, the number 21 gets into the side of that Mountain Dew 11 car. The 12 Trump car gets ploughed into the wall here, and of course these safer barriers, which are, incredible piece of technology, the safer barriers in the real world to protect the driver and of course the crowds as well here in some of these speedway races. So back to the same again. Number 5, Kenny Zeems with the 64 of Catalano, but that time that was very different. Catalano, as you said, got a much better run, and the 5 of Kenny Zeems was really under threat there. And a couple more laps, then we really could have seen a good duel. But it looks like the 5 of Kenny Zeems, his strategy to stay there at the front seems to be paying off for now.
Yeah, it's definitely working out for now because he's been able to control that point. But he has to be careful if he keeps timing it up at the same point and going at the same point. Exactly what happened last time with Trevor Catalano being able to go at that same point as him because he's seen it, then happens and he gets side by side. Now, what Trevor Catalano needs to do is time it up with him, but he needs to stay more towards his door in turn 1. If he pushes up the track like he did, then that allows the 90 of Ken Zeems to get back inside of him going down the backstretch. So he's got to be very careful with exactly how hard he sends it into 1 to try to stick to that door.
Do you think, Brian, that the number 5 and the number 90, the Kenny Zeems and Ken Zeems, do you think that they might be in radio contact with one another?
I definitely think they do. I think when we've seen them time it up before, it was definitely off of them talking with one another and deciding when to go because they're just able to then put the car on the outside side by side with the 90 of Kenziem's behind. So, and that's such a big deal because, like I said, it allows the 5 of Kenziem's to pull away, but it also gives the 90 of Kenziem's the preferred line going into the turn, and he doesn't have to stick behind a car. He has the option to try to hurry up and make that position right away.
Of course, in the real world, in NASCAR, that has such an impact as well. Guys like the Penske organization or the Ganassis or Joe Gibbs, Hendrick Motorsports. They've all got multiple cars there out on the track, and of course, the more cars you have out on track, the more effectively more control you can take on the race, I guess.
Yeah, the more cars you have out from your team, you then have those options to work with one another. Sometimes it's very helpful. Other times, like as we saw in the Coke 600, it's hurtful when a teammate maybe blows a tire and spins it out before you end up taking that white flag. So it can be a blessing and it can hurt you at the same time.
So the lights are off on the pace car here. We're on lap 39, so we're about to come into the closing stages of this race. Let's see how the two Ziems, the 5 and the 90, if they can stave off the challenge of the 64 of Catalano. So we'll be seeing the pace car peel in closely. And we see the number 6 there as well. That black and green car that was involved in the earlier wreck, still there in contention as well. So
It
waiting
does
for
look
the
like
pace.
we might be coming to the white flag here also.
Okay, so we might just get one more lap then. This is going to be a real thriller, hopefully. So, waiting for the pace car to pull off, waiting for the number 5 of Kenny Seems to gas up, and they go early, and the number 90 is right in behind them, and Catalano's being caught sleeping as they head into turn 1.
Okay, it did change to a green-white checkered, but yes, Catalano then lost that spot to Kenziem's there, so we'll see if Ken can catch Kenny. But that was great for Kenny because now he's going to have Catalano trying to get back by Kenziem's, and that's going to allow him to pull away more if they get side by side.
Well, I tell you what, the number 90 car is doing everything to help the number 5 win this race, and this is so frustrating for Catalano as we take the white flag. That means one more lap to go. So if Catalano's going to win this race, he's got to do something really special now.
Yeah, it looks like Kenny Zeems is going to be able to pull this off, but he sends it in there deep into that dog leg. It's going to be very hard for him to catch him now.
Well, look at that. The number 5 of Kenny Seems on the same tyres finishes this race without any trip into pit lane as he takes a checkered flag. It's the number 5 of Kenny Seems takes the win here in race 3 of the New York Thunder eSeries.
Yes, and Ken Zeems comes home in second, with Trevor Catalano coming home in third. The sixth of William Kruska, who we saw have an up and down day, ends up bringing it home fourth. And Eric Conklin finishes out your top five in for the fifth position.
So we'll hopefully get a few of our drivers up into the commentary box here, and we'll get to hear their thoughts. I'm really interested to hear the contrasting fortunes of the two Zeems, Ken and Kenny, and find out if they're brothers, father and son, or cousins, who knows. And the 64 of Catalano, who he was certainly my favourite. I think he was both of our favourites for the race, but it did not turn out that way. So we'll be back after a very short break. Welcome back to the New York Thunder eSeries here on Apex Racing TV. Well, it was certainly a dramatic last lap there with the two Zeems of Kenny Zeems and Ken Zeems really working together to overcome the 64 of Trevor Catalano. And it looks like we have the 64 Trevor Catalano, third place. He's with Brian Delp.
Welcome, Trevor. And that was a very interesting race there. We saw that you ended up pitting while Kenny Zeems stayed out. Did you think that was the better decision at that time?
Yeah, I was starting to get a little bit loose. I figured Kenny would come down, but hey, uh, it's I I don't know. I guess more people came down with us than I thought would, but I figured Kenny would come down.
How important was being the leader of this race and getting that big restart?
Yeah, that was important. It was hard to guess on when Kenny was gonna go, but it's all right. We got P2 or
Now, when
P3.
now when you were back in the field, were you a little bit nerve-wracked with being back there after how many cautions were coming out?
Yeah, I wanted to get back to where I was comfortable with I'm not wrecking maybe as quick as I could. Just wanted to make sure I didn't get caught up in the wreck and made sure I didn't take my fast repair when I.
Yeah, that's another big thing is accidentally pressing that. Now, when you finally got back to that front and you saw that the Zeems were lined up nose to tail, did you think that was going to make things even more difficult for you?
Yeah, it was definitely gonna make things more difficult. I knew that if I didn't get a good enough start and wasn't side by side with them, that there was gonna be no room to get down. So, just did my best to try to be door to door with them across the line.
And the other thing you said was that you ended up starting to get loose, and that was roughly after probably 10, 11 laps green. So towards the end of that race, did you start to feel that again also?
Yeah, I was definitely starting to get a little bit loose there at the end, but I could see that Kenny was a little bit more loose than me, so I thought we might have had something for him, but.
Well, thank you for stopping in. That's Trevor Catalano finishing up in the third position. So, congratulations on your third place finish.
So we'll just wait to see if we have any other drivers who are going to come in and join us for an interview. Kind of unlucky there for Trevor Catalano. I think he had the best outright pace, but just a victim of all the caution periods and the number five of Kenny Zeems able to stave off the challenge. So we'll hopefully see if we've got anyone else in the waiting room. We'll have a look. So it looks like we've got Eric Conklin. He's with Brian Delp.
Congratulations on your top five, Eric. How did you feel throughout most of that race?
Very nervous, especially where I was starting. Most restarts, I was starting on the outside. I'm happy when my top five finished, able to recover from that wreck. When the sixth car spun out and hit the wall, his tail end actually hit my engine and it blew up, so I had to go use that fast repair. And I went all the way to the back and was able to get up to fifth in those last couple of laps. Very interesting race and was definitely very fun.
Now, one of the big points that we made throughout this race was that dog leg where you can stretch out, and it's very hard to kind of see where your competitors are. Did you feel like that was maybe a little bit of concern when you were going through there?
It was definitely nerve-wracking because in the Legends I actually crashed not knowing that there was a car up above me, so I was very nerve-wracking every time we went on a restart and we're 4 or 5 wide going through the dogleg.
And as the race progressed, Trevor said that the cars were getting a little bit loose. Did you feel that also?
Honestly, for me, they were getting tight. I just kept getting more and more tight as the race went on.
Did you wish that maybe you got a few more green flag laps? Do you think you maybe could have caught some of those cars that were up in front of you? Or do you think that's about where you were? Fifth place was about where you were probably going to get.
If we had a nice green flag run in the beginning, I feel like I had a top 3 car. I probably could have stayed there throughout the entire race, but it is what it is. I'll try again tomorrow night.
Well, top 5 is nothing to be sad about. That's a very good finish, and congratulations on
It
that top 5 there, Eric.
it sure is.
So thank you for joining us. So again, as we have gone through our order here, one shout out that we do need to make is Russell Peets went plus 11 through the race. So that was a big shout out to him in the 091 car, going up 11 positions from the start of the race. And now we are joined by Ken Zeems, finishing second place there in the number 90 car. How was this race for you? You spent a lot of time up front, especially racing behind Kenny there. Were you two kind of working together a little bit on those restarts?
Yeah, we were. I was trying to push him as much as I could. I'm trying to get by Trevor there. Trevor had new tires, and me and Kenny, we just stayed out, and we figured we'd be good. A lot of caution, so and I kept telling him just save tires, so we weren't burning them up. Worked out. I just want to say I feel bad for getting into William there. I just misjudged it. I was trying to actually follow him past Trevor there, and I misjudged it and hit his bumper. So I feel bad for that.
Throughout the race, did you feel the car changing much, or was it pretty much the same for you with all those quick cautions that were happening to kind of save the tires a little bit?
Yeah, no, it pretty much stayed the same. And I don't know. It might actually been getting a little faster. 'Cause I don't know if I had damage or not. I got hit in the back early in the race. Actually, a guy used me to slow down, and then I had a little front end damage. But other than that, it seemed to drive pretty much the same the whole race.
Was there any major point that you think kind of changed how your race was going to go there? I know you talked about the contact with William there in the six, but was it kind of getting to the front and just kind of holding that position, or was there another point that you think really helped you get to this finish?
No, I figured I had a top 5 car, so and that last restart actually, Trevor he missed a shift, so that helped out there too, obviously. So but it's cool. Finished 1-2, and Kenny's my son. He's pretty good. I tell you, I'd have a lot more wins if he wasn't racing. I finished second to him a lot, but that's all right. He's younger. He's got some better reflexes than me, so I like seeing him win.
Well, second place is nothing to be upset about as you finish again behind your son there. So that is Ken Zeems. Congratulations on your second place finish there, moving up 3 spots from the start of the grid and coming away with a second place finish.
Yeah, thanks.
So there you have it, folks. Ken and Kenny Zeems, a father and son team working together in perfect harmony for young Kenny Zeems in the number 5 to go ahead and win this third race of the New York Thunder eSeries. We're nearly out of time here on Apex Racing TV. We will be back tomorrow night for the final race at 10 p.m. Eastern for race 4 of the New York Thunder eSeries. Brian, final thoughts before we sign off for tonight.
I think we kind of saw a lot of the racing that we thought we would see. We talked about the dog leg, and that was a major issue. But the moves that the Zeems put together with working together on those restarts to make those positions, along with Kenny getting those big restarts and Ken being able to push them through and stay alongside that other car, that probably is what really determined the finishing position of this race. The way that they were able to truly work together as a team just made this such a big thing. And so then some of these guys having these up and down days, being able to come back. Like I said, Russell Peets finishing up 11 positions. Matthew Lambert being able to come back and finish 9th in the 2 car after all the issues he ended up having. So it's just these guys were able to trudge through all the issues that ended up having and putting on some good racing while we were green.
And tomorrow, looking forward to tomorrow, we're going to have a lot of fun tomorrow because tomorrow we have the modified car, which it's almost like halfway between an open wheeler and a stock car. So tomorrow is going to be a completely new challenge, but we'll be back here at Phoenix Raceway. As I say, same time again tomorrow on the Apex Racing TV YouTube channel and Facebook. So please do join myself and Brian Delp tomorrow. But for tonight, on behalf of myself, Brian Delp, and Dennis Branch in production, thank you very much indeed for watching, and a very good evening.